What is up, guys? PK here, and boy oh boy do I like bananas. I mean, have you tried bananas? Bananas are like the best. I mean, come on, like they're bananas and stuff. Did you know that all bananas are in fact clones of each other? Yeah, it's true. All bananas are actually the same banana. I mean, that just makes your mind go bananas. There can be only one party of knives. Or something. Anyways, what is up, guys? PK here. And in today's video, we're gonna talk about backstabbing. What is it? What does it do? How does it work? Why does it not work the way you probably think it works? So on and so forth. You get the idea. We're also gonna cover a couple of recent shade changes that seemingly sort of flew over everyone's head. Now, I have put a link to a 𝒮𝔴 video down in the description, which is sort of the original OG video that a lot of the stuff I'm going to explain here is based on. So that's a video I recall watching and going, had no idea. It's going to be hopefully higher quality, but nonetheless, in a certain way, a ripoff of his video. And I didn't want it to come across like that, so that's why I've linked his video down in the description. I don't like taking stuff from other people, but someone suggested a video regarding backstabbing. I thought it was a great idea. The only reason I'm mentioning this is because his video was sort of what taught me how this mechanic worked. And so for that reason, I thought it was fair to link it down in the description. So I've done that. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about a couple of shade mechanics specifically. So if you're a shade main, which obviously a lot of people probably aren't anymore because now everyone's a sister of the Thorn main. No, but if you're a shade player or a general just a Carillion player, you're likely going to learn something new, and there's going to be a bunch of interesting mechanics in play here. And with that said, let's get started. Wow. The keep is so beautiful. I mean, just wow. I mean, if you take a moment to just stop once in a while, this is actually a really pretty game. Anyways, now here we are in the keep, more specifically, on the shade. Pew-pew! There we go. Hoodie buck. God, I love shade. Anyways, let's get down to brass tacks, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Now, so there are a couple of things I want to talk with you guys about today. Now, before we get to the specifics of the backstab mechanic, I want to talk to you guys about two recent changes that were made to two of Shade's talents, Cloak of Mist and Cloak of Pain. Now, in my opinion, these were bad changes. I disagree with both of them, but they were made in order for the actual talent descriptions to be accurate. But in my opinion, I feel like it was the wrong way to nerf the talents, but really they were done because they weren't meant to work that way in the first place, as I understand it at least. They weren't meant to work that way in the first place. They worked that way. They changed it so they were in line with the description. But here are essentially the gist of it. So if we start with Cloak of Pain being the talent that deals massive amounts of damage on the first hit. Now, as you can see in the middle of my screen, afterwards, after using my ultimate here and doing like this, I get another invisibility buff, right? You can see that I'm actually invisible even after performing the first attack. Now, it used to be the case that this was a guaranteed critical hit. So in other words, if I had a boss over there, I used to be able to do like this, right? Ulti, invisibility, boom, double kill, right? Because it was a guaranteed critical hit. However, it is not anymore. So when you exit that invisibility from here, it's not a guaranteed critical hit. It can be a critical hit, but it's not a guaranteed critical hit, right? As you can see, not a critical hit there. Not a critical... Oh, wait, I actually got one critical hit there, but you get the idea, right? So that's no longer a viable guaranteed critical hit. Then we have the second change, which is to Cloak of Mist. Now, it used to be the case that with Cloak of Mist, you would ulti, critical hit, and keep critical hitting, right? Now, you still have the guaranteed critical hits, but not until after you leave stealth. Just think about that. So, let's say that I use my ultimate here. This is not a critical hit. This is. But it used to be that this was a guaranteed critical hit, but now you only get that after you leave stealth. And think about what that means. That means if I go up here and I try to position myself to use the guaranteed critical hits, I get here while in this, but my first attack is not a critical hit. And at least it's not a guaranteed one. And that means because it's not a critical hit, of course I just have to keep critical hitting right now, right? Because it's not a guaranteed, for fuck's sake. Because it's not a guaranteed critical, Jesus Christ. Because it's not a guaranteed critical hit, that means that by the time I actually use my ability, right? So in this, I go up behind the minion, I attack, I attack, I attack, I attack. Oh wait, is it because I still have the buff from... That would make sense. Big brain! There we go. I attack, I'm then no longer invisible, right? Because I attack, I lose my invisibility, the minions turn around, I then try to, you know, keep using my ultimate, right? But the problem is, because it's not a guaranteed critical hit on the first attack, what that means is essentially that the ultimate, you can no longer get those streaks where you walk behind the enemy minion, you use Cloak of Mist, you know, walk behind, you take your attack, you get an execution, that procs Vanish, and you get this streak of essentially of backstabs, right? But you can no longer guarantee that, because the first attack is no longer guaranteed as a critical hit. That's a huge nerf, and I don't mind the nerf part. I don't mind that it's a nerf. I mind the manner in which it's nerfed. I think the whole idea behind Shade, which is also why I dislike this talent in the first place, the whole idea to me behind Shade is that to play her well should require this positional skill where you get to that right spot, and then you have this guaranteed critical hit that can proc Vanish, and being able to control the flow of backstabs, vanishes, ultimates was the whole idea behind Shade, right? So I feel like all this change really does is, sure, it's a nerf, but I feel like there are better things you could nerf. You could nerf the damage of this ulti, right? For one, you could nerf the cooldown reduction to this talent here, and that would be a way better nerf. Okay, it would feel better. Like, I feel like that's a more logical nerf in my opinion, but that's just my opinion, of course. Let me just say that I could be wrong about this. I'm not claiming that my word is all-knowing here. I'm just saying, in my opinion, I feel that is the wrong nerf. Because again, it's such a good feeling here that you can do that, and then if you position yourself in time, boom, you can have a guaranteed critical hit, which can kill some more minions and will proc your Vanish again, and hopefully you can get that streak going, right? So anyways, I'm going to stop rattling on and move on to the actual topic of this video. So backstabbing. First things first. What is backstabbing? Well, backstabbing is this effect you have from your passive called Murderous Prowess. And it reads, critical hit backstabs instantly slay man-sized enemies. Okay, so we know we need a critical hit and we need a backstab, and that will instantly slay a man-sized enemy. Now, what is a man-sized enemy? Pretty much, a man-sized enemy is pretty much anything with the exception of a Chaos Warrior, a Standard Bearer, and bosses, lords, so on and so forth. They also don't count as man-sized enemies. However, a Beastie Gore does. You can see here, man-sized, not man-sized, man-sized, not man-sized, okay? So that is the definition of a man-sized enemy. So pretty much any minion that isn't either of those two exceptions, or a boss or a lord. So all of those count as man-sized enemies. Right, so the thing people get wrong about backstabbing, which 𝒮𝔴𝔞𝔤𝔢𝔯𝔮 was absolutely right about, that I think a lot of people misinterpreted, misperceived, is that the angle of attack, for example, matters, right? So a lot of people, myself included, would sort of, do like, dodge sideways, doing like that, thinking that that was going to affect the backstab, right? Whether or not, the attack actually came from the right here, right? So I'd go, oh, boom, that's a backstab, right? But no, I'd be wrong. It would be equally likely to backstab, even though this attack, an attack that comes from the left, would be equally likely to backstab as one that came from the right. Now, the reason behind this is really quite simple. You guys may remember the video in which I explained to you pushing works and how effective block angles work, right? And in that video, I talked to you guys about this cone that came out of your character, right? That sort of, if you imagined a three-dimensional sphere around your character, right? And then a cone that extended out sort of on the plane of that sphere, right? And that cone, it would be your sort of, and depending on the angle you have, right? The angle of the weapon, that could be 40 degrees for a dagger, it could be 90 degrees for a bunch of other weapons. That would be the degree, so that the degrees on the cone, on the triangular cone, that extends from the center of your character, which would then define whether or not it was an effective block or an ineffective block. And don't worry if that makes no sense to you right now. I will demonstrate here, right? So I'll do like this and like this. That should help, right? So if you look at the character here, I should animate some cones on this character to illustrate what I'm talking about. So the backstabbing cone is 56 degrees, right? So that is the angle of the triangle that we again in 3D will turn into a cone, right? But that is the angle at the bottom that extends from the character. So inside the 56 degree cone, you are backstabbing, no matter what. If you are standing inside that cone, you are backstabbing. Now the direction of the cone is defined only by the direction of the minion. That is to say, the sort of the visual direction of the minion, which is separate from the animation of the minion. That is to say, right now when you see the storm vermin and it's looking right and then it's looking left, and you know, that changes nothing. Okay, that is not relevant to the cone, because that is an animation that is sort of put on the minion, but the minion is not actually moving, right? The minion isn't actually turning, it is a turning animation, but the actual physicality of the enemy isn't moving right now, because I turned off its AI, which means the way it's facing is static. And when the way it's facing is static, separate from the animation, then the cone that determines when you are and when you are not backstabbing is also fixed, right? And this is important for a couple of reasons, which we will get to momentarily, right? But so the cone you can see right now is determined by sort of the direction the minion is facing, and is exactly 56 degrees. Now, one of the implications of being a cone, in similar fashion actually to, so you're not the exact same, but you can draw similarities to what I talked to you guys about regarding the push block angle and so on and so forth, where because it was a cone, when you're pushing, right, because that's also a cone that extends from you, if you have a large enough push angle and you jump whilst looking downwards, then you can do a 360 degree push. And that is sort of the opposite of what we're going to do now, which is to check when you are backstabbing, when you're not. Because when or not you are backstabbing, you see, because it's a cone, that means if I step backwards, right, I'm moving further away, but because it's a cone, that means the area in which I'm backstabbing is larger the further away I am from the minion, right? Which is also why I can be standing here and be backstabbing, but if I jump, then I'm no longer backstabbing. Now, one way to look at this, as you can see here, right, backstabbing. Pretty much no matter what I do here, as long as I'm backstabbing, right? Here, it's a little bit, it's pretty much the same. It's actually almost easier because I'm, by definition, a little bit further away because of that. But once you get over here, right, you can see, because it's above me, even if I'm jumping here, I am unable to ever get a backstab, right? Like, I would need to move backwards here in order to ever get a backstab because it's a cone, or jump really, really high, right? Then you can just about get it, right? But that means it's harder to backstab stuff when it's above you or below you, right? You see here, not backstabbing. See, this is not a backstab. This is a backstab, but if I jump, it's not a backstab, right? Right, so see here. See how it did not die from that? That is because I was jumping, and thus I was not backstabbing. Now, this is all very relevant for a couple of reasons, which we'll get to momentarily. You see? Not a backstab. And that sort of, so the only thing that matters for a backstab is the sort of the relationship between the character, like the enemy minion, right, and the way in which it's facing relative to you. So one way to think about it is you could take the center of that character, right, and you sort of portray that cone backwards from wherever it's looking, and then imagine there's a line between me and the enemy minion, right, that is constantly just going straight from the enemy minion to me, And if that line intersects with the cone, right, then you'll backstab, no matter what. Like, again, it doesn't matter about the angle, it doesn't matter which way if I'm punching here, and then it's a backstab, right? If it doesn't matter, like, if I go here, see, it's not a backstab. Here, not a backstab. See, even though it's coming from the right and it may look like a backstab, it's not a backstab. So that's the only thing that matters for that mechanic. Now, one interesting thing you can we can portray here. Boom, right? So there are certain animations that minions do, and that was just, let's do one more time. Now, what's important to understand is that the way he faces doesn't change during an animation, right? So let's say he does like this. See, even though I'm trying to, even here, right, if I'm at his back, once he starts punching like that, it doesn't matter where his back is. You see, it looks, when he does his overhead attack, it looks like I'm standing behind him here, right? But I'm actually not. Not according to the cone, right? Because the cone doesn't change while he's in an animation. Really, the way a minion moves is very it's very spiky, right? So there's a difference between the animation and his actual movement. His movement is always going to be like from point to point, right? And it doesn't change very often. So he'll walk over to you, you move, then he might, like, you see there he changes direction. There he changes direction. Hasn't changed direction yet, still hasn't. See, this is not a backstab. So one way of showing it is with the Mauler overhead. You see, this is not a backstab. You saw? We were right behind him there. We were literally standing right behind him. It looks like, right? But we're not. Because again, his direction has not changed. You see, his direction has not changed. Even though it looks like you're right behind him, you're actually not. Not according to the way he's facing, because that is simply an animation, right? So his visual field, the way that the physicality of his minion is facing, has actually not changed since he started launching his attack. So even if it looks like you're behind him, you're actually not. See? Not backstab. It's just because it's the keep is on recruit by default, but that was not a backstab, right? So that was simply a critical hit. But that's important to note, right? And these are actually quite surprising things that, you know, again, the game doesn't really tell you. So keep in mind always when you're trying to backstab that the way the minion is facing is completely separate from the animation it's in the middle of. And so it also does not matter where your attack comes from. All that matters is that the attack hits, that it's a critical hit, and the direction of the cone in relationship to you, right? That's all that matters. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for the suggestion. This was an interesting video to make. And yeah, hopefully there's more of these sort of niche mechanics that you guys can come up with that we can cover. Hope you guys learned something new. Go check out 𝒮𝔴𝔞𝔤𝔤𝔢𝔯𝒮𝔮𝔲 if you haven't already. He's one of the OG Vermintide creators. I feel like I was lucky enough that when he stopped making videos, it was just randomly, like coincidentally is the right word, coincidentally right around when I started making videos, right? But he's a great guy, great creator, and you should go check him out even though he isn't as active anymore. And that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I love you guys. Stay awesome. Peace out. And boy, oh boy, do I like bananas. I mean, have you tried bananas? Bananas are like the best. I mean, come on, like they're bananas and stuff. Did you know that all bananas are in fact clones of each other? Yeah, it's true. All bananas are actually the same banana. I mean, that just makes your mind go banana.